I usually get a blank stare. You're second best? No, they're blessed to have you. And I pray that they are. But I've come to understand we're second best. The first best is for each of us to have our own birth parents, and that connection that kids have even when they're beaten. This is my mom. This is the one who gave me birth. To go live with another family, and I pray that they feel like they've been greatly blessed. But do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, I feel like I can barely even get started in the global picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow, I appreciate your honesty there. It was actually a side of this talk that I had planned to talk about, and I took it out because it can be very difficult to talk about and phrase without stepping on some toes, because the way you talk about it is very sensitive. I agree completely. I think God has designed the family. How can we say as adoptive parents that Paulina, my daughter, was not intended to be with her mother? I mean, how do I grapple with that? No, she was intended, God intended her to be born through her mother and stay with her mother for her life. Now sin entered, and that's where we see that redemption coming through. But that's where I think we need to be very careful of the stories that we enter into and make sure that the children we're adopting, that their stories match up and that they're legit. Because we can tend to struggle with that. We are in a way, I mean, it's to what Elizabeth said too, it's not ideal. This is not what it's supposed to be, but it's divine. It is what God intended in his bigger plan, and how he weaved everything together, redeeming something that was broken, redeeming sin. But it wasn't what was supposed to be. What was supposed to be was creation, the Garden of Eden. But we screwed it up. There was a mother, there's a story, it's in the blog world. If you look far enough, you'll get to it. This lady who's a pretty famous blogger on adoption, she adopted a child from Uganda, and she ended up finding out later that she was told throughout the whole process that this child didn't have any parents. She found out later that this child had a mother. Now this is after 2 or 3 years of this child living with her in America. They went through the whole process through an agency, thought everything was legit. She found out that this girl actually had a mother, and somehow found out through her connections directly back to Uganda that when this mother found out that her child had been sent to America and will never come back, she laid on the floor and cried for days and days. And so this American woman who, in her, I want to say ignorance, but even good intentions of going through a legit agency, but they didn't maybe ask enough questions or go, to the extent that they needed to, and now she's living with this fact, and she blogs about this constantly, of how she struggles with the fact that she has that mental image of the girl that is hers, that God designed for her family. We use that lingo. Her mother wants her back. She never intended for her to come to America and be adopted. Wow. To have that image, I can't imagine if that was my image as a father of Paulina, that I knew her mother was weeping over her every day and just wanted her back. Those are the things that I think all of us in our own ways, in our own stories, are grappling with and struggling with. And again, this is a messy thing. I don't think there's any clear answer. I just wanted to bring the perspective today that let's do our due diligence. In this process, let's never enter into adoption with any kind of ignorance or emotionally driven. That can be very, very dangerous. You need to be called, not emotionally driven, because your emotions, and this was my other story of my friend who adopted from Uganda. She was emotionally driven. She just wanted that boy at all costs, but yet the boy had a mother who loved him. It's a great point. Go on.
You brought up some really good points, and I wanted to, it's kind of twofold. One is when trying to establish some accountability, there's many different reasons why I personally have always kept my focus in this country when it came down to supporting orphans and their families. And so to kind of help me out.
Yeah.
When you look at an organization and you're saying, I want somebody that's reputable, I'm sure that your missions organization is reputable, but what are some things that you look at? Because you hear about these horror stories all the time where, unfortunately, things aren't right and the money doesn't go to where it needs to be. And so, is there any effort on your part in order to establish some accountability? That's one. And then how do you kind of whittle away the fakers from the ones that are really there to do the real deal? And that's my jumbled question.
That is a great question, and I don't have the answers. I've been on the international side of adopting, and we went through we actually adopted officially from and within Uganda. So we never did it from this side. I think someone like these guys, right, the lists here, could probably tell you in a more educated way what an answer would be, right? Maybe you can talk after, or I don't know if maybe you want to just give a quick answer to that. I don't know if you guys have more answers. I mean, how do you whittle away through the organizations and know that you're dealing with a sound organization?
Honestly, we're asked that quite often, and a lot of times people just look at me like, well, that's not really the best answer, but it really is where we start. But we pray diligently, and we say, open the doors that only you can open, and slam shut the doors that you do not want us to walk, or that are not genuine, or that are not, everything that you have listed. We have ran into multiple, even part of venturing out and collaborating with a church in Haiti and working with them and so forth, and we found out some things didn't line up as you did. And so it's just prayer and doing your homework. I so appreciate what you have shared today, and it is vitally important because knowledge is power. And we must go in with our eyes open. But God promises us, if we stay in tune and connected with Him, He will lead us. But we have to be still and be quiet and listening and do our homework and just keep checking the checklist.
That's great. And the only thing that I would add to that is just make sure you research the story. If the story sounds funny to you, it probably is funny. If you get deep into it and start asking questions about the relatives and the uncles and the aunties and the grandmother and things aren't lining up, it probably doesn't line up. That's probably the only other thing I would add.
Thank you. I wanted to add one thing to that too. Thank you, Jesse. I so appreciate it. Miriam's Heart is a part of an organization called the Christian Alliance for Orphans. And those of you that are representing churches and church leaders here, I strongly encourage you to become a member of the Christian Alliance for Orphans, because they do have criteria for the folks that can belong as an organizational member. They have criteria for adoption agencies who can belong to the Christian Alliance for Orphans, and all sorts of family preservation and community outreach opportunities. I encourage you to go onto their website and consider asking your pastor to become a church member of the Christian Alliance for Orphans. I believe, as it stands right now, I think there are 4 churches in New Jersey. And that is the purpose of why we do this event annually, is to start something going in this area, because we are culturally, financially, educationally rich. We are rich, and we can definitely make a difference. We actually do have a representative of the Christian Alliance for Orphans here today, and he is going to be praying us out today. I would like to introduce you to Pastor Dave.